When you're a fan of visual novels, you learn very quickly that it's never too late for a game to get localised, whereas iconic titles like 428 Shibuya Scramble, Witch on the Holy Night, or the upcoming One remake, publishers are increasingly digging into their back catalogues to bring their older visual novel titles over here. Aquaplus has joined this list of classic developers, on top of the Dungeon Travelers series, which by the way, like all Aquaplus games, need ports for Nintendo Switch in order to sell as well as possible. White Album Memories Like Falling Snow, also known as White Album 1, joins this lineup. So it's time to ask, is White Album 1 a good game? And if so, what makes it worth playing? Like a lot of visual novel fans outside Japan, my first experience with the White Album franchise was the fan translation of White Album 2 from Todakanai TL, which came out in December 2021. This sequel became extremely popular not just in Japan, but in the Western visual novel community too, thus White Album 1 gained renewed interest, including attempts by another fan to translate the PC version of the remake. This was also in part because people will reasonably ask, do you need to play White Album 1 to understand White Album 2? Well, the answer is that you don't, but it does feel odd having a second game of the series in English, but not the first. Hence why this official Steam release of White Album Memories Like Falling Snow is deeply welcome. This release of White Album is the remake of the original 1998 visual novel. The original 1998 visual novel was released back when Aquaplus did Erogi under their mostly retired Leaf brand. It was very different from anything they worked on before, given it was a lot more somber and depressing than the light-hearted Two Heart, and with no Denpa, unlike Kizato and Shizuku, were other iconic titles from the time. Over time, White Album became more popular, leading to the anime adaptation, which got an English release, as well as the remake, now available in English. Originally released for the PS3, and then later ported to the PC under the name White Album Suzu Rareru Fuyu no Omoide, this version completely revamps the presentation and scenario, adds full voice acting, an additional route, as well as taking out the simulation aspects, and of course, the porn too. Also, final side note before moving on, Sting Entertainment assisted with this remake, providing full technical support. Sting is known mainly for their Department Heaven RPG series, but I've also extensively worked with Aquaplus as well as Idea Factory on various projects, including the Psychedelic Otome games, Fairy Fence F Refrain Chord, the Utawarimno trilogy, as well as the HD ports of Two Heart 2 and White Album 2. The story of White Album at its core is loyalty versus infidelity. You play as Toya Fuji, a college student who's been dating his girlfriend Yuki Morikawa for a few years now. Yuki is an increasingly popular idol singer, and her popularity, and hence increased workload and time away from Toya, threatens their relationship. As the player, you adopt Toya's perspectives. Your goal is either to stay loyal to Yuki, go through Toya's baggage and repair your relationship, or do you go and find someone else instead? And there are 6 other love interests you can choose from. This is very much a romance-driven adventure set in the real world. If you're coming at this game seeing the name Aquaplus and are expecting any fantasy elements akin to the Utawarimno or Tears to Tiara series, you won't find that here. Instead, what you will find is a depiction of real-world Japan in the 1990s that explores various themes of the time but are still relevant today. They include Japanese idol culture, the pressures of being a celebrity, work-life balance, and of course, mental health. On a more mundane level, because White Album 1 originally released in 1998, the game reflects society at the time, which shares many striking resemblances to the West as well. It meant things like using landlines to call your friends and receive calls, whether they're from payphones or from your friends' parents, not using mobile phones. Another example includes the lack of widespread internet at that point, where the internet back in the 1990s existed mostly in dial-up form. It also meant receiving paper tickets to shows rather than personal ones. There are many more examples, but in many ways it's a throwback in time to the late 1990s in Japan and indirectly worldwide. If for younger players, it will feel slightly surreal in that respect because you're playing in a society that feels so familiar, but is also very different. You are playing a product of its time. First off, because all official Aquaplus localizations to date have been RPG hybrids or full-on RPGs, the gameplay will be quite different from those used to these hybrids. The gameplay here instead is much closer to pure visual novels mostly found on PC, so if you're coming from that perspective, you will adjust a lot easier. The gameplay of White Album 1 runs on a timer from November until February. and you go to one location each day. At each location you can talk to a character, and there will be either a major event on each route or a conversation that enables you to raise a stat. The possible stats are small talk, hobbies, entertainment, literature, and romance. You'll need to level up the stats to unlock new conversations down each route. Most of the characters you can talk to are also love interests, but you can also engage with Akira and Eiji, who are two guys. That's a huge missed opportunity for some good old yaoi right there, Aquaplus. This loop can get quite repetitive on multiple playthroughs. However, you can skip all text to make it go quicker once you've read the first batch, which means it doesn't outstay its welcome. To give a comparison to another 2023 localization, it handles it a lot better than Jack Jian, a game I've had to temporarily drop for the time being because redoing each route is way too bloody long in that game, whereas here is much shorter and easier to deal with. To 100% all the conversations and unlock all the achievements will take multiple endings and several different playthroughs, and it will become a bit of a slog. However, if you only want the character endings, there are walkthroughs online that will help you and won't take anywhere near as long. Moving on to the love interests now, and there are a grand total of 7 you can romance in this game. First up is Yuki. She is one of the 2 key heroines in the story and on the key art, as she is the girlfriend of the protagonist Toya Fuji. She's a rising star in the idol world, and is basically this game's version of Setsuna from White Album 2. Dependable, loyal, and possibly out of the protagonist's league. It's generally recommended to play her route first, as it sets up the rest of White Album's world and story nicely. Plus I do think it fits well as a first route. You do get to understand the dynamics of their relationship that underpins Toya's feelings of isolation, which are then explored more in other routes. Plus also, Yuki is a great character. Rina is the other main heroine in the story and in the key art. She's Yuki's friendly rival. She's nice and sweet, but has no personal life because of being in the idol world from such a young age. She's extremely talented and is even more popular in the idol world than Yuki. Rina's route is also recommended to play early on, as it feels like the most important cheating route out of every single route in the game. There are also some iconic scenes within this route that remind me a lot of White Album 2, which is a huge win in my book. Now on to the multiple side heroines now. Mana is a high school student that Toya ends up tutoring as one of his part-time jobs. She's trying to get into college and her parents want you to help Mana study for her tests. She is the obligatory cute Tundra character and is one of the most popular heroines outside of the idols in this game. Her situation is quite like Oharu from White Album 2. Something regarding this route I need to make clear as well. You're a guy in college dating a high schooler on top of the already problematic teacher-student dynamic. That said, her route was interesting to experience and has some of the best drama, so her route is worth reading. Misaki is the very sweet, gentle and caring classmate of Toya's. She's a massive playwright but has very low self-esteem, so doesn't fully recognise her own talent or believe in herself. Her route was interesting to play as it shows the kinds of awkward situations that can happen when somebody with her kind of personality is thrust into these kinds of situations that require communication and boundary setting. Haruka is Toya's longest friend and fills the childhood friend trope the most of all the cast here. She is sporty and athletic and also a massive airhead with a bit of a stoic personality. I thought her route was the weakest and had the most missed potential. I'm not really a fan of the character trope she has, and I wish her backstory was explored a bit more. Yayoi is Yuki's manager who helps chauffeur her everywhere, organise her planner and keep Yuki safe. She cares deeply from Yuki and will work to remove any barriers Yuki faces, and that may include Toya Fuji. She fits the stereotype of the cool, collected and seemingly emotionless love interest. Her route was an experience. I can't really explain without spoiling, but it is definitely a very unique route. And once the initial weirdness of it wore off, I appreciated what it tried to do and the angle it took to show Yayoi's relationships with Toya, Yuki, and the world around her. Sayoko is the all-new character added to White Album in this remake. She recently graduated from her idol troupe and is trying to pursue a solo career. Her route in many ways is different both in terms of design and content, largely thanks to Aquaplus gaining lots of writing experience since writing all of the other routes. That's why I recommend playing her route last. It's the perfect engaging route suitable for the finale after for 30 plus hours it'll take you to read through all of the routes. Now before moving on to my overall thoughts on the story, it's worth touching on the two main side characters, Akira and Eiji. Akira is the protagonist's childhood guy friend who hangs out a lot, having gone to school and college together, and they both work together at the same cafe. I thought he was an interesting character, and he has a surprisingly deep role to play in some of the seemingly less important side routes. On the other hand, Eiji is a veteran in the idol business. He founded Ogata Productions and is Rina's older brother. He can come across as unlikable at times, but this is partly because he's very perceptive regarding Toya's feelings towards his relationship with Yuki, and this does show throughout the game's story. He is definitely an interesting character. To give some spoiler-free thoughts on the story, I did overall enjoy it. It is slow to build up in most routes thanks to the calendar system White Album has, but there is almost always some form of payoff. The circumstances of each route and character are factored in incredibly well. Given this game was groundbreaking back when it originally launched in 1998, I think it's important to cut it a bit of slack when comparing it to more modern releases, especially its own sequel. However, one aspect of the protagonist I didn't really like is the lack of exploration and morality from the perspective, given that he is cheating on his girlfriend in most routes. On the one hand, you see him express his love for Yuki and how he wants to date her and remain loyal to her, but then you also see him say the same thing for other characters he is cheating on in the same route. It's a bit jarring to be honest, and shows a huge lack of self-awareness. Although this is something that is addressed in the sequel story, Toya is still a good character to adopt the perspective for the story. He's hardworking, has a large peer network, and is dependable in pretty much anything. Well, except loyalty to his girlfriend, that is. Now onto the trigger warning list, because here at Milla's Game Room, trigger warnings should be normalised for all visual novels aimed at all genders, not just those aimed at women. With that said, here we go. Depression, anxiety and loneliness. Infidelity, non-sexual harassment, sexual assault, both implied and off-screen, sexual themes with non-explicit description and imagery, including love bites and sex itself. Bear in mind this was originally an adult game, so what you're getting are originally reworked adult scenes. Violence, including mention of blood, and death/bereavement, where the death in question happened years prior to the main story, so you don't see it at all. Also, this is both a trigger warning and an accessibility issue, but there is a flash photography scene at the end of every route where Yuki is swarmed by the press who are taking photos and hence, well, flash photography. There doesn't seem to be a way to disable the flashes, however you can easily predict when the scene is coming and you can just skip through it accordingly. Aside from a few very minor text variations, the scene is the same on all playthroughs. Still, it's worth noting this issue, and given the age of this game, I doubt this will get an official patch, so plan your playthroughs accordingly if this is going to be a problem for you. Illustrations are done by Hisashi Kawata, a veteran of the original release, and were adapted into the PS3 remake using motion portrait. The portraits themselves are absolutely beautiful, and they're available for every major character as well as some side characters in each route. Motion portraits help bring the characters to life, their portraits expand and contract as if they're actually breathing, their mouths move and their eyes blink. It truly aids immersion, as it was basically Live 2D before Live 2D became a thing. The CGs themselves also look amazing and perfectly capture the drama and intensity, and there are multiple CGs for each route. This all new PC version visually upscaled all the graphics, including the CGs, and they now look better than ever. Compared to the original designs, the new designs are so much better and are more colourful and vibrant. That said, I've got to highlight this here, but I encountered frequent technical issues with these portraits. Often characters' eyes, eyebrows, mouths or noses were duplicated. They had extra Adam's apples below their mouths, or portraits are misaligned, meaning they cut off before reaching the bottom of the screen. This is also why when editing this video I have cropped the screen on some sections so you cannot see the bottom. Some of these glitches are genuinely funny, but they're also quite strange at the same time. From what I understand from doing my research, this is a rare glitch that appears on PCs with certain graphics cards, including mine. There is an unofficial fix that does reduce or eliminate the error for many people, but didn't reduce the problems for me as much as I'd hope. It's a huge shame and only serves to remind me why I wish this game should also come to the Nintendo Switch in English, where issues with specific graphics cards and rigs do not arise. As for the music, it was composed by Michio Kanegusa, rest in peace, as well as Junya Matsuoka. Both are long-time composers for Aquaplus, although for some reason Junya also arranged the OP for Katakoi Contrast? Okay? As for the vocal tracks, they were done by Suara, who is one of Aquaplus's most frequent collaborators, mostly known in the West for the Utawaremono series. And by the way, her cover for Powder Snow appears in White Album 1, is by far the best version, and I'm kinda wishing she covered White Album 2's version instead. In fact, speaking of White Album 2, we need to talk about an elephant in the room. Is White Album 1 better than White Album 2? Most people will answer no. However, the fact this question exists does a disservice to White Album 1 because it does have unique positive aspects that make it worth a playthrough. Let's touch on these. The first reason is you get to check out a classic visual novel just by checking out this game. So if you're into older visual novels or haven't learned Japanese yet, this is your chance. As I touched on at the beginning, a lot of classic 1990s era visual novels have been getting localised as of late. So if you're a big fan of visual novels, video games, or influential media in general, that alone makes this title worth playing. Secondly, the writer of White Album 2, Maruto Fumiaki, is a fan of the original White Album. This game served as a direct inspiration for White Album 2 after all, with Fumiaki seeking to surpass the original White Album in every way. If you play White Album Memories Like Falling Snow after playing White Album 2, you will recognise a few aspects of the character arcs, the story, and the route/gameplay structure that Fumiaki reused and expanded on in White Album 2. Just because you may recognise them doesn't mean they will in the same way, and they're still worth experiencing on their own merits. If you're a fan of Maruto Fumiaki's works, there is value in playing a title that inspired his works, even if you don't normally check out visual novels. Finally, from a more practical perspective, Memories Like Falling Snow is a much shorter game compared to White Album 2. So if you want to experience a classic Aquaplus title without the heavy time commitment most of their titles currently officially available in English, as well as fan translations, demands, this is the best option at the time of this video, at least until more of their older titles get officially localised, that is. And related to that, I do want to address the possibility of a White Album 2 localisation. New evidence has come to light since my localisation wishlist Aquaplus video a couple of months ago, and a lot of people have been asking for White Album 2 to come here even more in light of White Album coming to Steam, so let's talk about it a bit. As I touched on, the existence of Memories Like Falling Snow on Steam is the first reason, and from a business perspective it does make sense to localise White Album 1 before White Album 2. Additionally, following on from Aquaplus wanting to reboot the White Album series, both Maruto Fumiaki and Naoya Shimakawa have posted various cryptic tweets relating to the series. Idols unaffiliated to Aquaplus have also posted pictures of them holding White Album 2 vinyl, which is very unusual considering Aquaplus normally do not contact external idols to help them with their projects. And then when you combine this with the fact it's the 10th anniversary for both the introductory chapter anime adaptation, as well as the PS Vita port Shiawaze no Bukogawa, all of this heavily implies Aquaplus have a major announcement of some sort coming this winter, which has been an annual tradition for White Album 2 for some years now, but usually they are not major. I personally believe this announcement will be a localisation of White Album 2, based on the PS Vita port for PC, and hopefully consoles too, as well as the long-requested anime adaptation of Closing Chapter. This is all purely speculation at this point, but given all these little coincidences are happening one after the other and are so close together, there is no smoke without fire, so to speak. As for White Album Memories Like Falling Snow, its localisation for the West is just one of many chapters in the long-running history of the White Album series. But even putting all that aside, White Album 1 tells a solid romance story with a unique cast of characters in its classic 1990s era setting, something that's not seen much nowadays. That said, this game does need an official patch to fix the facial bugs I've outlined already, as well as a multi-language console port to enable more people to experience this story, and so we can have a physical copy of this great game on our shelves. Fingers crossed both come soon, because the fans of visual novels, White Album memories like Falling Snow is an experience absolutely worth checking out. Hello, and thank you for getting to the end of another review video here on Milla's Game Room. I really enjoyed this game overall and enjoyed making this review video, and I'm hoping to cover more Aquaplus games on the channel as more of them get released into English and I replay some of the ones I already have played. So yeah, stay tuned for that over the next several months, I suppose, or years. And so you can like and subscribe and comment so you are around to get these videos when they come, and all other various content too. So thank you so much and have a lovely day. Bye bye.